right, sweet, and a minimal number of pits. And I say, okay, get up to speed on all the watermelons in these bins. And then I say, on a scale of 1 to 100, what's the highest one that meets my criteria? And let's say it's 92%. Then I'll go around and I'll touch the different watermelons until I get yes 2 or 3 times, and then I take the biggest one. I mean, that's a guy thing. But it's amazing how sweet and ripe and juicy they are because you put forth your criteria. It's great for finding lost items. It's actually, there are stories that go on that are just truly amazing as far as, you know, I had a female client of mine who called me up, it was a Sunday afternoon in February, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And basically what ended up, she lives in Florida, and she was at a baby shower. And she calls me and goes, Hank, I need your help. Can you help me? And I said, you know, Rhonda, I don't know. What is it you need help with? And she says, I'm at this baby shower, and I need to go home, and I can't find my car keys. Is there any way you can help me? And I said, I'm not really sure, but I asked her to picture the car keys in her mind. And I had my higher consciousness get up to speed on whatever she was looking at. Getting up to speed is really doing the research. I got a yes. And then I said to her, okay, Rhonda, describe where you are. She goes, it's a big rectangular structure. There's a storefront on one end. There's a back entrance to a parking lot in the rear. Did I leave it in the front or the back of the store? So I said, I don't know, let's ask. And I got front, no. Back, no. And I asked middle, and I got a yes. So I said to her, Rhonda, it's in the middle of the store. What's in the middle? She says, I don't know, that's her office. Let me go in there. Oh, here they are. They're on your desk. So we're able to, you know, find things. And, you know, I've had situations with people who've been lost and been able to help find them, and, you know, people who, like, walked away from basically a retreat center, and they were lost overnight, and I helped the police were out with the dogs looking for her, and I got that they were east-northeast of there, and she was anywhere from 3/8 to a half a mile. And they found her in a dog kennel, just about a half a mile from that place, east-northeast of there. So it's really a skill that everybody has, and when we're able to utilize it, it gives us wonderfully new degrees of freedom in life. Actually, they have done brain scans on master dowsers, on the kahunas, which are the shaman out in Hawaii. They've done it on the Sufis, who are the very spiritual groups out in, I guess, the North Africa area. They've done it on faith healers, hands-on healers, yogis who do a lot of meditating. And the fascinating thing is when each of these individuals does their thing, if you will, the yogis do their meditation, the dowsers do their dowsing, and so on, they find that there's alpha, beta, theta, delta, and gamma brain activity occurring simultaneously. And if you do a brain scan on most people who are in the Western world, it's predominantly left-brain beta activity. So all a dowser is doing when they open up to that ability is using more aspects of their brain than the average person uses. And it doesn't make them any better or lesser than anyone else. What it just does is give them a degree of freedom and a tool and a skill base from which they can guide their life. And for me, it's come in really handy. I was teaching a class, I believe it was in Charleston about 8 years ago. And when I teach a class, it's usually a 3-day event. And they're very intensive. It's normally a 4-day class that I compress into 3. And my hostess took me out to dinner the first night. And we went to this restaurant that was noted for their Maryland crab cakes, which I happen to love. Yet when I do a class, I'm very cautious about what I eat. So I basically doused it. I pulled out a pendulum and said, okay, on a scale of 1 to 100, what is my benefit to eat this food? And it was very low. It was only about 14%. And the negative benefit was about 92. So I ended up having salmon that night, and a little bit disappointed. My hostess had the Maryland crab cakes, and she got tummy poisoning. She got food poisoning from it. So there's no way I could have in any way known that I would have gotten sick from eating that food. But by dowsing, we were able to identify it didn't honor me. Does that make sense?
Hank, do you have any of your dowsing tools nearby?
Yes, I do.
We are actually
basically 4
recording this portion of the show. So what do you have?
Well, there are 4 basic types of dowsing tools, and I'm not sure we'll be able to get it on the webcam. Do you want me to try to do that?
Well, if they're small enough, yeah. Just
Well,
lift it up or show it.
there are L rods. Let's see if I can move back and people can see these. There are L rods,
Yeah, right. We can
which
see that.
are basically a bent rod, and you basically hold them out, and these are what most people look at for when they're looking for underground water. And that's what most people are familiar with. So there's L rods. There are Y rods, which are what you would expect from that forked willow wand that people used to use to find water. There are bobbers. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, which is a little handle with a spring on it, a long piece of metal, and a weight on the end. And you can bob up and down and sideways. And then finally there are pendulums. Pendulums are a weight on a string. It's usually there's a bead on top. In this case, it's about a 3-inch chain and a bead on the bottom. I tend to use the pendulums as my dowsing tool of choice, just because you can see from the size of the other ones, they don't easily fit in your pocket. And it's
Very
amazing because one of the stories I wanted to share with you is back in the 1930s, there was a prison break, and the police were basically tracking down the convicts. And there was one convict that was really out of the, they didn't capture him for quite a while, and they sent some dowsers using those L rods. Let's see if I can do this. These were man. And they were tracking him for about 2 weeks. And then the dowser gets to the top of a rise, and suddenly he gets disconnected. And he's not able to get any information any further, and they called off the search. And what ended up happening was about 4 months later when they captured the convict, they asked him about it, and he said he had the dowser took 2 more steps forward, he was going to shoot him. So, unbeknownst to the dowser, he suddenly got disconnected, which is what saved his life. And that happens many times, because there are things that we're not aware of that come into play, which when we're able to, in retrospect, learn about why we got disconnected, we find out what the reason was.
Wow. Well, I was wondering if...
to share more...
Well, I was wondering, could you show our listeners one of these tools in action? Like, how would you actually use it? And what would be the practical application?
Okay. Well, let's use the pendulum because you can see that in the webcam. A pendulum is just a weight on a string. I have used a ring and a rubber band. I've used people's gold chain and a hotel key. And it's really just a weight on a string that we're able to connect through our higher consciousness using what would be called our autonomic nervous system muscles through our higher consciousness to give us answers. So basically, there are many different schools of dowsing. I'm trying to get this so that it shows up in the webcam. So again, it's a weight on a string. What we do when we first start using dowsing is we program our higher consciousness to what is a yes, what is a no, and then we start using numbers. So a yes is an up and down movement. I don't know, is this coming through on the webcam?
Yeah, it's coming through fine.
Okay, and a no is a side-to-side movement. And then what we do is once you're able to show which muscles give the yes and no, you can now start communicating with your higher consciousness. And it's really interesting because after we do that, we start asking for numbers. And I show people how to use a number chart, which is a fan-shaped chart which allows us to communicate with our higher consciousness over a 180-degree spectrum. So a lot of times people will say, does this serve my highest good? And if they get a yes, many times they very joyfully go out and do it, and a lot